being here tonight. My name is Jacob Pelletier, use he, him pronouns, and I'm a programs officer here with Vermont Humanities. And on behalf of the Rockingham Library and the other community groups of Bellows Falls, thank you for joining us for this evening's program. As some of you may know, this is part of our fall festival, where each year for National Arts and Humanities Month, we choose a theme and then provide community grants for different programming around the state. A lot of these are live streamed and hybrid, so thank you all at home who are watching the live stream for joining us as well. And we do still have a number of lineups of events coming up, most of which on Tuesday we have the Way with Words podcast and radio show co-hosts, live stream from South Burlington. And then on November 4th, we'll have the former poet, U.S. Poet Laureate Ana Limon speaking from UVM. So both of those are hybrid events, so you don't have to drive all the way up to the Burlington area to see those programs. But enough of hearing from me. I'm really excited to introduce you all to Andrew Ingall, who we've been working with on a bunch of different programs and oral histories and kind of keeping the memory of his cousins alive through the Warlé project. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Andrew.
My family lost touch with Leon and Warren over half a century ago. And then 4 years ago, we had a family reunion. But it wasn't in person, it wasn't on Zoom. It took place up here. Leon is on the left, Warren is on the right, and that's Nikki the Pekingese peeking through the screen door. They died in 2002 and 2007, respectively. This posthumous reunion with Warren and Leon was incredibly generative. It released creative and intellectual energy that was either dormant or I didn't even know existed. It offered me some ancestral healing. And getting to know Warren and Leon helped me appreciate some of the values that they held dear. Number one, be engaged in your community. And I see Bellows Falls as a very engaged community. Number two, keep moving forward. Anticipate the good stuff that comes with aging, as well as the challenges. My mother likes to say, getting old isn't for sissies, so be prepared. And number three, preserve and pass down your legacy. So that's why we're gathered here tonight. My hope is that some reflection that you hear, some story, some comment, or some question will help move this conversation forward. A conversation about care, connection, and community. Warren and Leon moved to Townshend in 1980. If you're from the area, you know that Townshend is about a half-hour drive from Bellows Falls. And when Warren and Leon arrived in Windham County, Bellows Falls was emerging from a rough patch in history. Long gone were the 19th century railroad barons, the paper mills, and bustling commerce along the Connecticut River. According to Gail Golek, in her podcast, The Secret Life of Death, Bellows Falls in the 70s was a hard-drinking, down-on-its-luck, blue-collar mill town. But there was a bright, colorful, and glittering spot in the center of town. Who here visited Andrews Inn back in the day? Can I have a show of hands? Of course you two did. See? Okay. Folks on live stream, let us know if you've been to the Andrews Inn. So, Andrews Inn was arguably the first gay-owned bar and hotel in Vermont. From the mid-1970s to the early 80s, queer folks visited both from the surrounding area and across the Northeast. They came from Boston, Albany, New York, Montreal, and they came from Brattleboro, Saxon River, Burlington, Chester, Claremont, Townsend. Where are you guys all from? Can we hear where you're coming from? Chestnut. Where else? I can't hear.
Bellows Falls.
Bellows Falls.
Saxton's River.
Saxton's River.
Townsend.
Where was that?
Claremont.
Claremont. Welcome, everybody. Andrews Inn transformed Bellows Falls into Fellows Balls. There was buzz and fuzz. Some locals embraced the idea of a queer mecca in Vermont. At the same time, there were incidents of vandalism, bomb threats, anti-gay demonstrations, and physical assaults. I can't say for sure, but I'm betting that Warren and Leon visited Andrews Inn also out of curiosity. As gentlemen of a certain age, Warren and Leon probably didn't stay out too late at the disco. But maybe they heard about the gourmet dinners served on Saturday nights. In 1980, a reporter from The Advocate sat at a table near the lobby's fireplace. He offered a glowing review of his meal. That's Sally Brown, by the way, if anybody knows Sally. This reporter wrote, quote, "There was a choice of chicken curry, sweet and sour scallops, steak, or a vegetarian dish called tofu. Very different, but delicious to this meat eater. With the dinner were fresh vegetables, a house salad, winter squash soup, good, and homemade bread, of which I had seconds. Dessert was a rich peach brandy sponge cake." Warren and Leon appreciated fine dining. They liked to entertain friends and neighbors at home. They served sherry and Bailey's Irish cream in crystal glasses. Warren baked Spanish flan, rich and silky smooth. And they went out to restaurants like Peter Haven's and Panda North in Brattleboro. My knowledge of Warren and Leon is spotty. Friends of theirs have shared memories with me. Over the past several years, I've been gathering pieces of the narrative, like an antiques collector, like Michael Bruno. I examine objects closely in order to make sense of them. What stories are these artifacts telling me? What is their provenance? Within the collection, some pieces of porcelain are chipped, some are intact. I've discarded trivial bits of information like worthless tchotchkes. Unfortunately, some of the most valuable objects are lost. Welcome to Warlé. It's my Mantiques Roadshow. It's an attempt to reconstruct fragments, to assemble facts and myths. Part of that work is filling in the gaps. But to do that, I need to conjure what's not there. What treasures have I found so far? Essays, letters, and poems written by Warren. Artwork by Leon. There are decorative objects and bric-a-brac that they sold and gifted, some of which were generously gifted to me. And the most important primary sources, friends of Warren and Leon, who are still living today in New York and in Vermont. I even tracked down a Brazilian cousin of Leon's living in Rio de Janeiro. So if you're watching, Elena, oi. But had I actually met Warren and Leon 30 years ago, I'm not sure they would have provided answers to all of my questions. There are experiences that are just too painful to share. There are events and relationships that we keep private. In 1979, Warren and Leon bought a 10-acre property in Townshend. The plot of land included a brick federal-style farmhouse, a sugar shack, 2 sheds, and a garage that they converted into an antique store. The exterior of that garage was unremarkable, but walking inside was like entering a portal into another world. It was a cabinet of curiosities and exotic treasures. They proudly informed customers that Warlé specialized in fine European antiques. According to one of my interview subjects, if a tourist showed up at their doorstep in search of early New England Americana, Warren practically chased them away. He'd bark, "We have no country furniture." They loved Europe. That was where Leon entered the fashion industry in the 1930s. And in the years following World War II, Warren worked as a journalist and learned the antiques trade in the south of France. Here's a photo I took about a year ago. It's the former location of Warlé on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It's between the For Rent sign and the coffee shop, only about 300 square feet of space. Soon after I began research on Warlé, I interviewed my Aunt Nancy. Back in the early 70s, Nancy was studying in graduate school. One day she was window shopping along Lexington Avenue. At 80th Street, she stopped in front of a small storefront. It dazzled like a jewel box, full of color, light, pattern, and texture. She was mesmerized. Nancy didn't remember too many details about the boutique, but I found this description in the New York Times shortly after Warlé opened. The year was 1958. Here are some images generated by AI to help you visualize. Here's the quote from the Times. "In the window, reposing on a bed of luscious red felt, is a hot chocolate service of eggshell Sèvres china. Within the boutique, a crimson rug continues the red theme of the window decor. Rich blue is splashed over the walls, and shelves are laden with everything from French cologne to Italian alabaster paperweights studded with tiny gold bugs." And Q magazine pronounced that Warlé is tiny but neat. No jumble shop this. On the elegant side, it offers the best of the old combined with the best of the new. And Aunt Nancy felt compelled to enter. Inside the shop, there was an older gentleman with thick white hair, slim, dapper, aristocratic. It was Leon, or Léon, with an accent aigu over the E. And his accent was hard to place. A little bit Russian, a little bit German, a dash of French, very continental. He smiled at Nancy. She thought he looked familiar, or familial. They discovered that they shared the same last name, Ingall. They were second cousins. Actually, this was not the first time that Nancy met Leon. They met when Nancy, her sister, and my father, that was back in the 1950s. But Nancy barely remembered any of that. Nancy and Leon's conversation was pleasant, friendly, and brief. She left the store, never saw him again. That was the last point of contact between my branch of the family and Leon's. One more detail about the shop was reported in Q magazine. The author writes, Warren Kronemeyer, Warlé's owner, has opened this boutique as a branch of the shop he operated on the Riviera for 10 years. New Yorkers will make him welcome again in his hometown. But Warren was not the sole owner of Warlé. All you have to do is look at the logo. First thing you notice is the unique lettering, most likely hand-drawn by Leon. Warren and Leon, Warlé. This here is a wardrobe trunk. Parlez-vous français? Un peu? Un petit peu? No? Oui. What does porter mean in French? Carry. And what does manteau mean in French? Jacket or coat? Yes. So, portmanteau. Here's a portmanteau. A portmanteau, or a wardrobe trunk, has two parts hinged together. On one side, you can hang garments, gowns, skirts, jackets, suits. On the other, you have these compartments. And here you might put accessories, shoes, hats, belts, gloves. You might also store your hosiery, your socks, and other unmentionables. In his writing, Lewis Carroll invented portmanteau words. These are lexical blends, combinations of two words into one. So for example, if Alice and Humpty Dumpty were here today, they might be chillaxing over brunch at Ciao Popolo. A portmanteau was essential luggage if you traveled on steamships in the post-war years. A fashion designer like Leon would have schlepped several trunks on a business trip. Leon's career in fashion began in Berlin. He was born into an assimilated Jewish family in Russia, but he spent his teenage years and young adulthood in Weimar, Germany. His family fled there after the Bolshevik Revolution. Two key archives help me learn a bit about Leon's early professional life. I located a dossier on Leon and his parents at the French National Archives. Between 1936 and 1938, Leon paid several visits to the French consulate in Berlin. He needed permission to travel to Paris, ostensibly for work. In his visa application, he stated that his employer, Max Behrendt, sent him to Paris 4 times a year. There he was planning to attend haute couture fashion shows, at department stores, and at private showrooms. An employer like Max Behrendt would provide designers like Leon with an expense account. And with that money, he'd purchase samples of gowns, bring them back to Berlin, develop dress patterns, and copy them for mass production. The second archive is in Townshend, and it's a glimpse into the working life of a ready-to-wear designer in mid-20th century. Sketches, drawings, size charts, newspaper clippings, and photography. The Thompson family was part of Leon and Warren's circle of friends. Warren and Leon recognized that Eliza Thompson, at a young age, expressed an interest in art and design. They designated her as the keeper of Leon's collection. I mentioned before Leon's employer, Max Behrendt. Like all Jewish-owned businesses, Behrendt's company was ultimately Aryanized and liquidated by the Nazis. But Bryant had the foresight to open a satellite business in England. He emigrated to London in 1935. 4 years later, he assembled a team of former employees who also had the determination, the luck, and financial resources to escape the Nazis. That team included Leon. I know this because Liza's collection includes this invitation to the opening of Behrendt's first and last collection with his British company. The card is dated September 6, 1939, just 5 days after Hitler invaded Poland. With Leon's help, Bryant launched a collection of sport suits, dresses, gowns, and skirts. Now take a close look at the invitation. On the front is an illustration of a woman in high heels. The hemline is just below the knee. The waist is tiny, lots of fabric to emphasize and widen the hips. Her cigarette smoke curves elegantly in the air, like her hourglass figure. The shoulder pads are sized for a football player. She's chic, modern, and self-possessed. And this archetype appears again and again in Leon's illustrations and drawings. Femme and butch. Think Joan Crawford, who starred in The Women, a film that was released in 1939, the same year Leon designed the collection. When Leon began his career in fashion in Germany, Berlin was a major European manufacturing center for ready-to-wear clothing. By the mid-1920s, there were 80,000 companies, half of them Jewish-owned, and they employed around 200,000 workers, including Leon. As a young gay man in Berlin, Leon lived with his parents on Nollendorfplatz. It's a city square that was, and remains, the city's LGBT neighborhood. By the late 1920s, Berlin boasted 160 gay bars and clubs. And the neighborhood of Nolli, where the Ingall family lived, was the epicenter of queer culture. Leon's apartment was just a few blocks from where Marlene Dietrich performed. And around the corner, Christopher Isherwood wrote the Berlin Stories, which is the basis for the musical Cabaret, which I understand is being produced here in Bellows Falls. For Leon, the city must have been a great source of inspiration. The Berliners who patronized these gathering spots helped fuel his creativity and his social life. To learn about the next chapter of Leon's migration story, I relied on a case file from the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. HIAS remains the oldest resettlement organization in the world, now serving immigrants and refugees of all backgrounds, but I'm sure they're having an extremely difficult time right now. This dossier includes an affidavit signed by my grandfather, Morris Ingall, on behalf of Leon. Morris served as guarantor for several relatives escaping the anti-Semitism of Europe. They longed for freedom and economic opportunity. My grandfather had arrived in Boston from a town in Ukraine only a few decades before Leon. Leon sailed from Liverpool on the SS Samaria on November 8, 1940. The voyage to New York took 11 days. Maybe he passed the time sketching and drawing. In order to get a job in the US, Leon needed a portfolio of drawings and illustrations to show potential employers. Liza and her aunt, Jeannie, are the keepers of Leon's sketchbooks. Each one is spiral bound with a black cardboard cover. There's a bold logo featuring Leon's full name in Russian, Leonid, and the design incorporates 3 cosmopolitan cities where fashion ruled: London, Paris, New York. Berlin isn't included. I don't think Leon wanted to dwell on the past. He was focused on the future. The women Leon imagined in pen and paper are independent and emancipated. Perhaps they're stand-ins for himself. To forge a new path, you need to conjure strength and confidence. You need access to superhuman powers. Maybe you're frightened, but you project fearlessness. Your makeup is a mask for anxiety, and your clothing is your armor. When the ship docked in New York, Leon must have taken the train to Boston. Morris and Grandma Bess took him in during the winter of 1940. My dad was a newborn baby. I'm sure Leon didn't want to overstay his welcome. So, by March of 1941, he left Boston and returned to New York. He listed his place of residence on West 77th Street in a declaration of intention. This form was the first step towards citizenship. America's entry into World War II put a pause on Leon's fashion career. But the draft was advantageous for Leon and other immigrants. Conscription was a fast track to naturalization. And the army was where Leon met his lifelong partner, Warren Kronemeyer. The military presented transformative opportunities for gay men and lesbians, particularly those who felt isolated in rural, sparsely populated communities. Most certainly, queer soldiers faced discrimination. Homosexuality, of course, was considered a mental illness. But at the same time, the military provided a setting for lesbians and gay men to find friendship, intimacy, and love. Here's Bob Backus. Several years ago, I interviewed Bob Backus. He practiced medicine in the West River Valley for over 40 years. His family practice was at Grace Cottage Hospital. Bob was Warren and Leon's primary care physician, and he was also their friend. Bob and his wife Carol described Warren and Leon as intelligent and inspiring, funny and fun to be with. I asked Bob how he met them. Bob explained that he was in his office at the hospital in Townshend, and one afternoon he learned that a neighbor down the road was not feeling well. He decided to make a house call. That's what small town doctors did back in the day. Bob said, as soon as I walked through the door, Warren flopped to the floor. He was having a cardiac arrest. That was our introduction. I performed CPR, and it was one of those extremely rare cases of success. Warren immediately came back to life, and boy, did he come back. Warren was asking me pointed questions. What happened? Who are you? You did what? Leon intervened and scolded Warren. This man just saved your life. Don't be so rude. I learned from Bob that before and after the war, Warren was working in Europe as a journalist for Reuters. He would travel across cities and towns on bicycle and conduct interviews for newspapers and wire services. He eventually revealed to Bob that his army duties were more specialized compared to an average soldier. He was an operative for the OSS. The Office of Strategic Services was a wartime intelligence agency. It ultimately transformed into the CIA that we know today. There was a semi-strict code of silence among OSS alumni. I got a hold of Warren's obituary, published in the Brattleboro Reformer. I can say with some degree of certainty that Warren wrote it. It mentions his time in the Army, but no mention of his OSS service. So what did Warren actually do during his time with the OSS? Did he recruit agents? Conduct sabotage? Did he run propaganda efforts? In Vichy, France, did he seduce members of the Gestapo in dark alleys and slit their throats? Or was he simply listening to enemy radio, transcribing and translating? I searched the OSS personnel files in the National Archives. Warren isn't listed, but that didn't concern me. I thought to myself, archives are incomplete. Records get lost. So I couldn't verify that Warren was a spy, but I could verify from his friends in Townshend that Warren had the gift of the gab. He could spin a yarn. Warren was a dramatic storyteller. So I'm holding multiple truths. At the time I interviewed Dr. Bob Backus, I hadn't yet learned that Leon also worked in intelligence. But this time I had real proof. Leon was a Ritchie boy. Has anyone heard of the Ritchie boys? Yeah? The Army assigned him to Camp Ritchie in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Maryland. So who were the Ritchie boys? In 1942 at Camp Ritchie, the US Army opened an MITC, a military intelligence training center. But according to one Ritchie boy, those initials might have stood for Military Institute for Total Confusion. Graduates of this training program compared Camp Ritchie to a circus, a summer camp, and a resort, all rolled into one. Most recruits had no military instincts whatsoever. They were intellectuals with high IQs. They were fluent in languages useful for the war effort, such as German, French, or Russian. 20% of the Ritchie boys were Jewish refugees, like Leon, who wanted to fulfill their patriotic duties and fight Nazism. They took an 8-week intensive course in mobile radio broadcasting, Morse code, aerial photography, psychological warfare, the enemy's order of battle, and hand-to-hand combat. Many graduates went overseas to gather intelligence on European battlefields. They interrogated both POWs and civilians. Some Ritchie boys went on to careers as spies and saboteurs at the OSS. And Leon was not the only gay Ritchie boy. James Lord was an art critic who wrote biographies of Picasso and Giacometti. Here he is in his Paris apartment, photographed by Henri Cartier-Bresson. Lord wrote a memoir called My Queer War. It's a coming-of-age story set during his army service. James Lord often felt conflicted about what he was fighting for. War in any era is a strange, messed up experience. And his life during wartime was confusing and wondrous because it was there that James Lord had his sexual awakening. At Camp Ritchie, there were comrades to ogle and admire, including one soldier who slept across from him. He wrote, "He was strikingly good-looking, dark hair, green eyes, and the irresistible smile of a cheetah, built like a Greek statue. And he merrily bragged, endowed by nature with the biggest cock west of the pyramids, a boast ratified daily by awed and envious stares in the showers. Gay people working in intelligence had nothing to lose and everything to prove. Information gathering or espionage was a test of one's courage and patriotism. Arguably, LGBTQ folks were ideal candidates. They knew how to communicate in code. Concealment and covert activity were second nature. The pattern of concealing and revealing continued into Warren and Leon's twilight years. In the late 90s, Warren required extra support to care for Leon, who was suffering from Alzheimer's. Warren was struggling as his primary caregiver. Their social worker, Janet Kramer, who still lives in Brattleboro, had been working with them long enough to gain their trust. She asked why Leon wasn't receiving support from the VA. He was a veteran, like Warren. Warren confessed that Leon had no health benefits. Leon was discharged from the military without honor because he was a homosexual. I was able to procure Leon's Section 8 discharge papers from the National Archives. And this is how I learned Leon was a Ritchie boy. Despite his skills as an intelligence observer and his training as a Russian translator, he was deemed mentally unfit for service, not eligible for reenlistment, induction, or reinduction, not entitled to mustering out payments, and ultimately not entitled to veterans' benefits. So Warren and Leon's care team, Janet and Bob, urged them to have a civil union in 2001. The year before, as you all know, in 2000, Vermont made history as the first US state to legalize civil unions for same-sex couples. Yes! According to historian Alan Berube, the discharge process for homosexuals included abusive interrogations about personal relationships. It's also common that many were put into solitary confinement in hospitals and stockades. I can imagine Leon feeling isolated, frightened, and depressed. If Leon ended up at a psych clinic, was Warren able to communicate with him in person or by letter? Did he provide comfort and courage for Leon to persevere? Janet, the social worker, shared with me a letter that Warren wrote to her in 2002, shortly after Leon's death. Warren reveals the following to her. I go around the house in a kind of dream. I get up in the middle of the night to check on Leon, make certain he is okay. And of course, he's not there. I sit down on his bed and I think of the past. I wake up an hour later, still sitting there. During the day, I try to make order, deciding what should stay, what should go, and if it's to go, where. But things are slowly getting better. I'm gaining some control over my thoughts. I'm learning to live without Leon and make a new, different life. You have been a wonderful friend to us, Janet, from the day we first met you. I will always think of you with affection and thankfulness. I wish you happiness. Warren K. Warren eventually moved into a small residential care home just up the road from the brick farmhouse. He and Leon made an arrangement with Grace Cottage to donate their house and property in exchange for lifelong care. Very smart. Their farmhouse still stands today, almost structurally unchanged. It currently serves as an administrative office for Valley Village, an affordable senior living community. The paint in the kitchen is the same today as it was in the 80s. In the summer of 2022, I attended a ceremony acknowledging Warren and Leon's generosity and legacy. Both Grace Cottage and Valley Village installed commemorative plaques in their buildings. Valley Village also unveiled a rainbow-colored sculpture designed by Robert Dugrenier, a renowned glass artist who lives in Townshend and who knew Warren and Leon. That ceremony also acknowledged efforts by Valley Village and Grace Cottage to increase their attention and focus on LGBTQ elders. They formed an equity team made up of staff and community members. And over the past few years, Grace Cottage has earned top scores in the Human Rights Campaign Healthcare Equality Index. Here's me and Joanne Blanchard, and there's Joanne Blanchard. She's executive director of Valley Village. At the commemoration for Warren and Leon, Joanne introduced me to a lesbian resident at Valley Village. We had an opportunity to chat. It was a meaningful moment to learn that Warren and Leon's legacy is more expansive than anything I could have imagined. During the period of sheltering in place, my research into the lives of Warren and Leon was a vehicle to travel across time and space, a portal to the Warlé multiverse. I crossed the Atlantic with them on the Queen Elizabeth. I was a guest at Leon's luxurious ancestral home in Tsarist Russia. I danced with him at Weimar cabarets, revues, and queer nightclubs. I bicycled with Warren in the French Riviera. But this journey isn't entirely fantasy. Warren and Leon's legacy is real. The connections I've made with their friends are real. The feeling that I actually met them is real. There's so much joy in discovering queer kin. But at the same time, there's grief and regret. Why did these branches of the Ingall family tree sever after Leon moved out of my grandparents' home? I missed the opportunity to connect with them when I was coming out 30 years ago. I like to think that Warren and Leon would have enjoyed a visit from their younger cousin. I admire the life that they created for themselves in Vermont, surrounded by maple forests and friends. They developed new root systems to anchor themselves. I'm grateful that Warren and Leon found each other. I'm grateful that they found family, a logical family that supplemented and supplanted a biological family. I'm here in Bellows Falls to remember Warren and Leon, but I'm also here to honor another couple, Thom, Herman, and Jeremy Youst. You'll hear from them soon. They're alive and well. They were the co-owners of Andrews Inn from 1979 to 1984. Andrews Inn was more than a business, and I understand now why it deserves its state historical marker. Because it was a rare gathering place for community, care, and connection. With great emotion, Jeremy shared the following with me. Once you entered those big, beautiful hotel doors and you closed them, you were in a safe haven. That's what we could offer, a safe space. We didn't even think of it as we didn't even think of that as part of being innkeepers. We're here to celebrate our living elders, and we're here to celebrate our ancestors as well. Like Thom and Jeremy, Charity Bryant and Sylvia Drake were entrepreneurs. Back in the early 19th century, they also contributed to the local economy and civic life. Their tailoring business in Weybridge apprenticed and employed dozens of young women in the needle trade. But the most noteworthy fact about Charity and Sylvia is that Weybridge viewed them and treated them not just as companions, but as a married couple. That's 150 plus years before Vermont made same-sex civil unions and marriages legal. Here is their double silhouette portrait, part of the collection of the Henry Sheldon Museum of Vermont History in Middlebury. It's framed by pink silk and hair that loops and curves around them. There's a heart between the two of them. Charity and Sylvia, Thom and Jeremy, Warren and Leon. These LGBTQ plus folks made their mark in Vermont history, but there are so many others upon whose shoulders we stand. Those who aren't as well known or haven't yet been discovered. Those without names and records on Ancestry.com. So here's my invitation to you. Speculate, conjecture, imagine the lives of people in your family tree, whether that's biological or logical. I also would like you to imagine what caregiving could look like in the future. Take a look at this cradle. It's from 1815. It's also part of the Henry Sheldon Museum collection. but it once belonged to Charity and Sylvia. It was not designed for an adult. It was designed for an adult, not for an infant. In the Shaker tradition, it's called a granny cradle. Like many people in the early 19th century, Charity and Sylvia suffered from a variety of illnesses. So when one got sick, the other rocked her gently to sleep, to relieve anxiety, to ease the pain. Rocking not only soothed the sick, but it also did some good for the caregiver. So let's rock. You can turn the lights on, Garrett. Yeah, let's rock. I mean, literally, let's rock. This is the audience participation section that we're not expecting. So just go with the flow. Oh, I should take this for our live stream viewers. Okay. This participatory activity can be done standing, or it can be done seated. It's up to you. For those who wish to do this activity with a partner, perhaps you can choose someone who you might not know, who you didn't come here with tonight. So, can everyone get up? Those who wish to get up, find your partner. Okay, everybody. Are folks still looking for partners? Great. Okay. So, if you are with a partner, one of you place your arms on the other's shoulders, like that. Like you're doing a dance, okay? Then the other should place their arms on your waist. Okay? Great. It's like you're about to dance, okay? So, and also, if this is a little weird and you don't want to face each other, you can do this back to back also. It's up to you. Okay. And if you are not partnered, and you are doing this exercise solo, at home, wrap your arms around yourself like this. Okay? Like you're giving yourself a hug. Oh, I love that there's a throuple over here. So queer. Now, close your eyes. Slowly begin to rock back and forth. Do it gently. Really gently, incrementally, slowly. You don't need to take big steps. Feel the weight of each other. So I want you to do that for about 30 seconds, okay? Now, while you're rocking, think about 3 to 6 people in your life who you could reach out to for support. That could be emotional support, physical support, or financial support. Picture them in your mind. And if no one comes to mind, imagine people in your life currently who have the potential to become folks you can rely on. Maybe they're neighbors. Okay, you can open your eyes. Thank you. Now, take a seat with your partner or with your throuple. And here's another question for you. Again, without any constraints, what would a system of support and care look like in the future? No restraint. Dream big. Okay, so I want you to take some time to talk about that. Oh, let me get the slide on the screen. Hold on, if I have that. Yeah. Now, within your groups, just take a few minutes and share with each other what a system of support and care could look like in the future, without any restraints. Okay? Let's do it. Two-minute warning. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to do this discussion. You just want to keep going, don't you? Okay. Let's shut up. Oh, okay. Well, I hope during the Q&A portion, some of what you discussed in your groups might come up as part of our discussion later, so hold on to what you've been discussing. I now want to move into our panel. I'm very excited to invite to the stage here Gail Golick, Thom Herman, and Jeremy Youst. While we're gathering here, I wanted to do a few acknowledgements. I want to thank Vermont Humanities for their continued support of this project. I want to thank the Samara Fund of Vermont Community Foundation for supporting this event. Thank you. I want to thank our co-hosts here. I could not have done this without the Bellows Falls Pride Committee. Special shout out here to Gail, to Aaron, to Susan, and I also want to thank Fallsland for providing the dance that's going to follow at Ciao. So come with us to Ciao afterwards. I want to thank Senior Solutions for being a co-host, and of course, Valley Village, who's been a long-time supporter of this project. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Brian, board member who's here. And that's it. So I'm going to hand this over to Gail.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here this evening. And I'll just get this started off by a brief introduction and pass the mic down, and we'll start having some conversations, some good conversations. So as Andy said, I'm Gail Golick, and I'm part of Bellows Falls Pride here in town, and my connection to this project and this event tonight is I'm a local gal, and I'm an archaeologist and historian, and really enjoy doing a lot of local history research, and got really interested in learning about the Andrews Inn a few years ago, and reached out and met Thom and Jeremy through that, and have learned a tremendous about local history and LGBTQ plus history with that project. So that's me, and I'll pass this along.
Hi, I'm Jeremy, and boy, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for that exercise, by the way.
You helped me with that.
Yeah, okay, all right, that's good. And I'm really feeling right now like a sense of family community, and it's bringing up my own background, where I had a closet queen grandfather and a lesbian sister, and it was one of those 50s families. And so what's coming up for me right now, and especially in this 45 years later event, is the time space, the temporal nature of how do we provide care for each other. As I was just saying to Thom a moment ago when we were talking about the possibilities, I said, well, as long as you're alive, I'm okay. So you can't hide it from me. But just feeling that as I grew up and came out at 18 and moved up to be with Thom when I was 18, I was really in that reactive phase of like, I don't want to have much to do with my family because it was really dysfunctional. And then, of course, what happens as we age and get older, where's the lineage go? And how, for me anyway, how it became more important to feel community, and that conscious family could include different members than just blood and just biology. And I think that that's since then, it's a very current issue that I feel we could all address together in a number of different ways. Anyway, thank you.
I'm Thom Herman. I live in Northampton, Massachusetts with my husband and our dog in a community of 100 little cottages that is a wonderful support for us. What this has meant for me, and I thank you, all of you who have made this happen, is that when I left April Fool's Day, 1984, and closed the inn, I left with a lot of trauma and a lot of things that I need to deal with psychologically. And I never would have imagined that 40 years later, people would be celebrating and giving me a chance to heal and appreciate some of the wonderful things, friendships that still are happening to this day. I practice as a psychotherapist full-time, and I'm running 2 Airbnbs, and I own 2 companies, so I've been keeping busy. But this is wonderful for us. I think just, the first time we came to Bellows Falls, I forget what the exact event was that Susan McNeil and Gail and the others had all made. It was an amazing thing to drive into town with rainbows, across Main Street. And I had never been able to stand outside the Andrews Inn building and feel safe. In all the 5 years that I was there, I never could do it, because of what had happened. I was the one who had been punched out at one point, and, it's just, I can't say it enough, it's healing to sit with you all and have you be interested in it and all the work that Andrew is doing, so thank you.
Whoa. Well, the first question, I think we'll start with Andy. Wanted us to reflect a little bit about what we saw here with the Lauren and Leon story, for each of us to what spoke to us most when we were hearing their story. And I'll just jump in, and a couple things popped up for me when you got started. Andy's talking about the ancestral healing that you experienced through this story that you didn't even know about, in your family, and how funny that happens to us so often. I think that we come across stories like this. This happened, for me in the Andrews Inn. I didn't know, and where those stories take you, you don't even know what you don't know. And I think that's the parallel there was really interesting for me to see that in your story as well. And the overall construct of us being here tonight, of this legacy of care. How do we care for each other? How do we can look at their relationships, see how it worked for them, and then how we can do that just every day, little things, being kind to people. And I think about one of the things that takes away so much from the learning about the inn, and just knowing the two of you, how a place can be a source of care for people, and how that naturally evolves. And it's the people as well, but having a place that you can identify. And Andy and I had talked a little in our preparation for this about third spaces. You have your home, and you have certain places at work, but it's usually for many of us an outside space where we actually find our community and our family. And it sounds like
a library.
Like a library is a wonderful third space. Absolutely. Thank God for this library. And yes, so many of those themes just reiterated through their story as well.
It was interesting what happened for me, and I appreciate your presentation in that I had a realization about, even though, as many of you may know from the podcast or the stories, when we bought the place, the day that we closed on the property, there was a protest march down the center of town in Bellows Falls with all kinds of bullhorns, get the fags out of town, and we hate queers and all of that stuff. But what happened to me through the openness and transparency was that although I'm not practicing, my whole lineage of my family, both sides, is Jewish. So it was like getting in touch with, maybe there's a piece there that I need to look at about some of my reaction to how and what was going on that felt like it was very much against us, and the depth of that. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, the inn was like a fortress. And I would maintain our home down in southern New Hampshire, and come up and park in the back. And then I would come in the back door. And I did that most of the time because I didn't want to go around front and have to deal with how we started. And then it was very interesting, just by focusing our energy on the task at hand, to fix the inside, to repair the outside, to get new compressors for the walk-in cooler, to fill the oil tanks with oil that went from 50 cents to $1 a gallon. You know, there were a number of things that took place that were way off our performance when we went to get there. And just focusing on that, and I was the guy with the tool belt. Okay, so I did the electrical, plumbing, and toilet repairs, and would go down the street to the hardware store, and interacting with the people and the other storekeepers that are part of the hotel, and the 10-cent millionaires, we called them, that would come into the restaurant and have their 10-cent coffee and pontificate about the world, and don't go across the river, you don't want to do that, all that crazy stuff. And slowly but surely, one interaction at a time, began to melt. The fortress nature of it, the us and them barrier, got holes in it, became more translucent. At least that was my experience. And I was doing a lot of the connections on the outside, and Thom, of course, was on the inside running the whole joint. And when we had party weekends there, most of the downtown vendors would make another couple of thousand. And so they learned to really appreciate, in this down and out, burnt out mill town, that there's some new life, something that had come. So even though we were very clear about the mission, and Thom was the one holding the flag, for sure. I was holding the bottom of it, but we were carrying the flag. We were really clear about the mission. And then what I think surprised me also was that it really was about the whole community, that we had to address our energy of acceptance and willingness, tolerance, and love. And that I think even though there were a number of events that caused us to close on April Fool's Day in '84, that it felt like we had left our mark. And maybe the safety wasn't just where the brick wall was, but just on the sidewalk outside, in that region. And even though we were exhausted, because it was a 24/7 thing, I was, like Thom was saying, coming here tonight, I think I'm integrating more of, wow, we made a difference.
One story. Okay, just a quick story of the way in which there were allies and there were people all along from the community is my story about the Yellow Rose Ball. So a young woman who had worked for us in the restaurant, which we called the Yellow Rose, had been killed in an accident, in a driving accident. And she was very fond of yellow roses, so we decided we would throw a Yellow Rose Ball to raise money for her, in her honor, for the local high school. So we had this ball, and it was open to everyone. And I'm just sharing it because of the lineage, and my favorite story is that when I had come out to my parents about us, which was my coming out, they were sort of polite. My mother ran to a room and said it was all her fault. My father, a surgeon, had a great bedside manner and said, I'm sorry you couldn't have told us earlier. But then 3 days later, I heard from them that we weren't welcome in their home. So now, fast forward to the Yellow Rose Ball. One of my very favorite stories is they came to the ball. And here we are with townspeople, our crowd of all of our people from the bar who had been, or people who work there. And my favorite moment of all was I was standing in the lobby area, which is where I always stood to greet people all those nights. And I looked over to my right, and my mother was sitting at the Pac-Man machine. Some of you may remember the Pac-Man machine. She was sitting at the Pac-Man machine with Glenn Hughes, who was my friend and one of the village people, discussing life. So there was my mother. And then I looked over to the left, And my father was in the discotheque dancing with my dear friend still to this day, Brian Murphy, dressed as Pearl Bailey.
Yeah, I just want to
That's the gayest thing I've ever
I just want to say one more point about the importance of third places. This year, I'm serving as an ambassador for a nonprofit organization called the Foundation for Social Connection. And it's so important that we have spaces like the library, like an Andrews Inn, to reduce loneliness and to foster connection, especially now when everything is so fragmented, everything is so torn. I was looking for something about Andrews Inn a couple weeks ago, and it had occurred to me that there was this journal called RFD, which was a publication for rural gay men. It's still in publication today. And there was a 1979 issue that I found online featuring an interview between Robert Redwing, who was a friend of Thom's, and it was 1979. It was just several months after Thom and Jeremy officially took ownership of the Andrews Inn, and Robert asks him a question, Thom, about the gay community in the surrounding area of Bellows Falls. And Thom says, "I felt the geography of the area separates us, or has separated us all along, and we all have maintained our trips in our own little boxes, and it's hard to find the vehicles to connect. And I feel that the inn is it for a lot of people. We're sitting here tonight having the interview while the coffee house is meeting downstairs for the first time. We're donating the space. The Southern Vermont Lesbian Gay Men's Coalition is running the coffee house. I feel like it's the beginning of an alternative to the bar scene, and another way this place will function for gay people to support one another."
Yeah, if that doesn't tie it all in together, I mean, beautifully, what was that, 79? So, yeah, we're still figuring that out, like where we can find places to feel comfortable and safe, and it's an effort that you have to make in rural areas to do that. It's not, we all know it's not necessarily so easy to find each other, but thank you for Falls Land for making it once a week or every month. We have a dance party, or they have a dance party at Ciao Popolo, which are wonderful ones. So check it out. It's really great. You don't have to dance. You can go and just chat and have a drink. You don't have to dance. And that sort of brings me around to something that I've been thinking about in preparation for tonight. I came across a term that somebody was talking about called a corrective emotional experience. And I think for many people, and especially in the LGBTQ plus community who have had maybe negative experiences or carry a lot of trauma, that it's hard to put yourself out there and go and try to find people to talk to. And it's very to be vulnerable, to just go to a place you don't know anybody or something like that. But that idea that you can just have an actual location where you can have a different experience that is good and positive. And I think about that in relationship to the inn, how it must have functioned like that for a lot of people. And I wonder, in your experience back in the day and even today, as because you're both therapists, how you see that, how you've seen that evolve from maybe what sort of experiences you saw people having 40 years ago versus maybe today, and as different generations, maybe how that's changed.
That's a big one. Yes. Has it changed? Yes. Are there things that are similar? Yes. I think that, in the 70s, I was talking to someone the other day, and it was like, wow, the all these overpasses with the signs, no kings. This is reminding me of the 60s. You know, when we poured pig's blood on Nike missiles and, you know, put flowers and guns and stuff like that. And at that time, but there was, to me, it felt like, you know, you're young, we had a lot more energy, of course, and, you know, we can make a difference and follow the dream. And I think over time, that has shifted, you know, in our culture, especially since COVID. I just restarted doing a sacred circle kind of ceremony in Brattleboro once a month, and I did that in Keene for 17 years as a way for people to have an alternative to a, you know, intentional setting, spiritual and drumming and all that kind of new agey stuff, but a place where we could come and support each other and validate each other and heal. I think right now we have that another wave of an opportunity to do just what you're saying. Okay? And I think you know, what we put our attention on grows. And if there's one thing I really want to say to this lovely group of people is, your lives make a difference. You may not know it at this time, but if you slow down and take a deep breath, I'm a breath worker. If you take a deep breath, your lives make a difference. The choices that you make collectively make a difference, and they're making a difference right now. And so I would invite you to consider that, you know, no one in this room is, you know, over the hill or beyond the capability of redirecting attention and love to yourselves, to your life, to who you really are. And by doing it one person at a time, again, as a group and as a whole movement in this nation around the world, I think we are going to change what I started to change when I was 18 in the 60s or 70s. You know, we are going to change. And that is a very personal and it's a collective thing. Thank you.
I think when I decided to move to Northampton, a part of that was I wanted to feel supported. I wanted to exhale. I remember a wonderful story I heard that many years ago there was apparently some young gay man walking down Main Street and some pickup truck came in or was harassing him, and about 15 women surrounded the pickup truck and rocked it and told him to get the hell out of town. So I feel like this is where I want to live.
Rocking seems to be a theme.
It is. I don't think they succeeded in calming them, but they scared them, which was good. You know. But you know, I think I don't have a lot to say, but I remember learning a lot about our community during my time at the Entrance Inn. One thing I remember is men saying to me that they were gay and that they had never had sex with a man sober. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think there do need to be spaces, and there do need to be safe spaces. Like Northampton doesn't have a gay bar, and when I first moved there, I said, well, "Why is that?" Because they did for a while. Sally Brown, who had worked for us, worked gay bars in Northampton for many years, but I think it was decided that it didn't need a gay bar. That all the bars in Northampton were welcoming to anyone of any persuasion. But I do think a lot about loneliness as I work with people, and of course it's for all people, not just our community. And I think that, you know, the whole thing about social media being antisocial and, you know, just the idea of our people getting together. Like I run workshops for the work of Byron Katie at my place that I created a workshop space, and I travel all over. But it's harder now to get people to come in person. You know, people want to do easy online stuff, you know, and save time. I have 50% of my client load is now telehealth, as they call it, right? Because if I have a couple that wants to do couples work with me who lives in Putney, then they can just get on and spend 2 hours or an hour and a half, whatever, with me. They're not going to have to spend 5 or 6 hours to drive all the way down and have that time. So I get it. but there's also something feels like it's missing a bit. So I don't have an answer to what's next, but I think the question is important.
I just want to suggest now, Gail, if I may, that you've got more questions, I'm sure, but I thought this might be a good time to open this up for questions and you can ask anything. And I'm going to be Phil Donahue, if anyone knows that reference. I'll probably go around and if people have questions. So please raise your hand if you have any questions about the presentation. You have a question about Andrews Inn, a question for Thom and Jeremy. Great.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Scott Garvin. I live in Townsend. And I'm not an academic, but I really appreciated what I understood was like you kind of made a bunch of stuff up. And so that seems like kind of a very queer thing to do. To use our fantasy and our imagination to fill in blanks or project fantasies. So I'm wondering, for you guys, it is important to kind of, perhaps be historians and get the facts straight, but the narrative is going to change and the rumors are going to fly and what happened and who did what to whom. But when you bought the Andrews Inn, and maybe even when you closed the Andrews Inn, were there projections and fantasies that you had around the older guys from Townshend who maybe came, and were escaped the war in the 50s? Like, if I could invite you to wonder or make up something that wasn't true, what tale might you tell that informs the flavor of like where we are today and what we're trying to co-create in this room?
I don't know. It's a really good question. And in the, 9 months it took for us to raise the funds and buy the inn, we had lots of stuff that we could make up, or I did. And all kinds of concepts about what it might mean and what we were going to accomplish or not. And then when we hit the ground running, it just kind of, reality took over. And because there were so many moving parts to it that that became mostly most all of the focus. So it wasn't until afterwards that I was like, okay, what did we just do? What did we just do?
Was your question what we thought when we closed about the folks that may have been patrons?
I mean, I'm actually inviting you to join our presenter in being a little bit more creative and make up a new story on the spot right now. Let's make this so.
I don't. I'll tell you this. I don't drink and never have. And I bought a bar. I was running a restaurant. I'd never had a restaurant. And I was the landlord to 4 storefronts all at once. We went through all the things we went through, some of which have been documented. So my thought in hearing your question was, I couldn't think about the people we might be letting down because I was in survival mode. I remember this place I cared for as best I could for all those years and all that we had done. I mean, we didn't have any funds, and we were having the young people who were living and working with us scrape the old wallpaper off the walls that was embedded with cigarette smoke, because when we inherited or bought the place, there were like 5 older men that had been living there all along and lived there until it was their time to go, and then we would renovate those rooms, etc. So I was telling Jeremy the other day, I remember distinctly, April Fool's Day, I walked into the kitchen and I took one of the plates and I smashed it on the floor and walked out. So that was my dramatic story.
I think this question that you have is interesting for Gail too, because Gail, as I mentioned before, created this fantastic podcast about the Andrews Inn and other issues. It's called The Secret Life of Death. And Gail is now in preparation for a documentary film about the Andrews Inn. So I'm wondering, what are you thinking about in terms of getting the facts right and also getting creative with the documentary?
I'm learning a lot about I'm not a filmmaker, so that part of it I've left to the professionals that I'm working with. And as far as the creative aspect of it, of course we want the details, and we want the stories, and we want the experiences, and that's really what I'm focusing on. I think the creative part in that is letting it happen. Like, we have an idea of what we want to say, the points we want to hit, but really it is the stories of the people that will drive that narrative, for lack of a better description. But to your question earlier, I think about, even when doing the documentary or the podcast, all of the people, and you mentioned this a little bit, like all the people we don't know about, people we never heard their stories. And the people that you was like, well, oh, they had a roommate their whole life. Oh, really? And, well, what was their life like? We kind of learn the code, and we can read between the lines in certain instances. And then you just can't help but wonder what their life was like, or, being people who were together for couples all over the place. It wasn't just Charity and Sylvia, in our history, there were couples all over the place. And I think about them all the time, and I love to imagine, I imagine nice things for them. Hopefully they were happy, and they were able to find a slice of life that worked for them in their time and that sort of thing. But it's kind of fun to imagine in certain aspects. But I'm a historian at heart, and I really just want to, I want to know. I want to find the thing that says, yes, this happened on this date. And that sort of thing, but so I'm a little rigid in that regard, unfortunately.
Yes. Wait.
Hello. My name is Michael Shosted. I'm from East Hampton, Massachusetts, and I have lived in the Valley since 2002. And Vermont was always a very special place for me when I came up. When I moved to Western Mass, because I didn't really know anyone, but friends of mine, or friends that I made, they're like, we're going to Rock River. I'm like, oh. So, Andrews Inn was a very special, unique, very special place, safe space, Rock River equally. I'm just curious what the network of, because Vermont is very special to me. Like, I come up a lot because it feels great up here. And I'm just curious, in addition to Andrews, was Rock River a happening thing then? Was there another network of special places in Vermont? Because you said people came from all over to Andrews, but I'm sure they also did other things too. So I know there was other special things, but I don't know exactly what. So I'm just curious, what the network was, if there was.
Well, at the time, I wasn't, there was RFD, and they're out and about, and there were a number of different things, but, what you were just saying about history, one of the things and I'm going to see if I can address some part of your question, but one of the things that I was first struck by, because I haven't really been in Bellows Falls very much, mostly in the Keene areas where we lived, and it's a river town, and a river runs through it, and there's a dam, and okay, so the dam has got a purpose, but before there was a dam, what was it? It was a river town with a lot of rapids, and by the thousands, indigenous people came here because of the fishing opportunity. And they would gather here, a very physical, reason to be at peace in this immediate area because it was nourishing. There was a lot of old karma with the mills and the railroads and everything else, and it was very precipitous, the timing, 1979 when we were there. AIDS was just starting. We had 5, 6 major fires downtown. The fish ladder came in. And there was a possibility, there was a feeling like, oh, we might be turning this around. I mean, our original vision was like, hey, 5 to 10 years, we're gonna turn this town around. And we're gonna have streets and caves and everybody's, have some way of getting along. Well, okay, that dream sort of went down the sewer, but yeah. So, but what I was realizing that what we could do, and I think if you open up your own homes, you can do, is you can provide nourishment, like the fish in the river. This connection, our community connection, is nourishing. It fuels us. It helps us remember that we're a part of something bigger than ourselves. And that if that was the only thing that I think we were able to plug into, realizing that we weren't really doing it as much as we were being done, right? We were being moved by a bigger force. I tend to look at those higher planes, a bigger force that was ready to activate a period of transformation. Okay? And that we as individuals also, if we listen carefully and connect to ourselves, that we'll be led to those transformative experiences which are moving all of us as a species.
And I want to answer your question by saying no.
Okay.
I'm not aware at that time of other wonderful or possible things in the area other than those two.
I think maybe we have time for one more question, because I want to dance with all of you at Ciao right after. There's a nice spread that's being prepared for us, and Darlene has asked me that she would love it if you could order some drinks and order some dinner too. So how about one more question if anybody has one?
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. What a good time this has been, and what a great reveal for many of us, I'm sure. My name is Will. I live in Chester with my handsome husband, Bryant. But I have not been out very long, and I also have been married to a woman, have children, and my question is, and maybe someone's more expert at this than I am, but in a time where words really matter, the term queer to me is something that I struggle with, and I know it's part of the acronym, but I was wondering if anyone could comment on that. And is that sort of, it's more than just semantics. Is it helping? Is it hindering? And I apologize for ending so deep, the last question, but I promise I'll be fun later.
So I'll just say my experience was similar, right? I'm 78 years old, and my experience was this is a terrible word, right? And this is blah, 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 blah. And it's taken younger folks to let me know that this is their word now. And so it's kind of like Thom saying to Thom, get over it, and it takes some desensitizing and to appreciate that they are reestablishing it as celebratory.
Ditto.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in my late 40s, but that was always a pretty pejorative term growing up, and so I think it's a wonderful, just how language works in general, and how a group can take a word, like you said, reclaim it and put their own connotation and description and on it, and it takes all that stuff takes the power away of it being a negative thing, and I think the overall trend being it can be confusing and overwhelming that there are so many terms sometimes I think for some of us to get our heads around, but at the same time I think it's great. Like all the young people I come in contact with, they are just amazing and wonderful, and they are just on top of it. And I know that there are other issues for younger people that we don't have to deal with, but to see that, like just the idea of like a 12-year-old to be able to contemplate queerness, and it just gives them room and space and define themselves within that. And it can be kind of a nebulous term, or it can be a real specific term depending on how it appeals to you, individually. And I just love it. I personally just love it. So.
So I'd like to toast all of you at Ciao now. Cheers, queers. So come join. Thank you so much for coming tonight.